You are sitting on your porch tonight. The sun just dropped behind the tree line, and within 90 seconds, the first mosquito finds your ankle. Then another lands on your neck. You slap. You miss. You reach for that expensive spray you bought at the hardware store last week, the one that promised protection for the whole family. It burns your eyes, it stinks up your clothes, and by tomorrow morning the mosquitoes will be back anyway. Now imagine this instead. A simple wooden frame, an old box fan you already own, a piece of window screen from the shed. Total cost, if you already have the fan, is under $7. And by sunrise, that thing has killed so many mosquitoes you will need to shake the screen over the trash can. Thousands of them in one single night. No chemicals, no propane tank, no $300 machine from the big box store. The first time I saw one of these running on a farm just outside Millersburg, Ohio, I stood there for a full 10 minutes just watching the screen fill up. The old man who built it grinned at me and said, "The English pay $400 for something that works worse than this." He was right. And what I am about to show you comes straight from a design that has been quietly used in plain communities since the 1950s. Documented in a 1962 Agricultural Extension Bulletin from Penn State, and buried so thoroughly that most Americans have never heard of it. This works whether your house was built last year or in 1942. Stay with me all the way to the end, because the final piece, the one thing the Amish add to make this trap catch 3 times more mosquitoes than the standard version, is something I have never seen mentioned in any mainstream guide, and it costs less than $1. Let me take you back to the summer of 1953. A farmer near Intercourse, Pennsylvania, was losing his mind. His dairy cows were miserable. The mosquitoes coming off a low wet pasture behind the barn were so thick you could hear them before you saw them. His neighbors were spraying DDT everywhere at the time. It was the miracle chemical of the decade. Cheap, deadly, endorsed by every county extension office in the country. But this farmer would not use it. Not because he had any moral objection to killing bugs. He had a simpler objection. He watched what DDT did to his barn cats. He watched what it did to the honeybees his wife kept for the church, and he decided there had to be another way. He remembered something his grandfather had told him about back in the old country. When mosquitoes got bad, they used to hang thin cloth in the doorway of the barn and let the wind blow through it. The mosquitoes, weak flyers as they are, would get pressed against the cloth and die of exhaustion. It worked, but slowly. This farmer had electricity in his barn. Many plain communities do use certain forms of shared or generator power, contrary to what most outsiders believe. He had an old belt-driven fan he used to keep the milk cool, and he had a piece of fine screen his wife had thrown out from a busted door. He put the fan facing outward under the eave of the porch. He tacked the screen to the intake side on the back of the fan. He turned it on at dusk, and in the morning, the screen was black with mosquitoes. Thousands of them. Suffocated, dried out, dead. His cows slept peacefully. His honeybees were untouched. His barn cats were fine. Word spread, slowly at first, farm to farm, buggy to buggy. By 1962, a researcher at Penn State named Dr. J.O. Rao wrote up a small extension bulletin titled "Simple Mechanical Insect Control for Rural Homes." He documented the fan trap in 3 paragraphs. He measured the catch rates. He found that a standard 20-inch box fan running from sundown to sunrise, with a properly sized mesh, captured between 800 and 4,000 mosquitoes per night, depending on the location. That bulletin was printed in a limited run. It was distributed to county agents, and then, quietly, it disappeared. Why did it disappear? Because in 1957, a company called American Cyanamid began aggressive marketing of household insecticide sprays for consumer use. By 1965, the pest control industry in the United States was worth over $400 million a year. By 1980, it had crossed $1 billion. Today, it is worth over $22 billion annually in the United States alone. A $10 fan trap that a farmer could build in his shed was not just inconvenient to that industry. It was an existential threat. And so the knowledge got buried under a mountain of advertising, endorsements, and paid research. Every summer, you and I have been walking past hardware store shelves stacked with cans of poison that our grandfathers would have laughed at. But here is where it gets interesting. Because the Amish did not just preserve this idea, they improved it. And I want to walk you through exactly how they build it so that by the time you finish this video, you could go into your garage tonight and start assembling one before you go to bed. Let me tell you what happened when I actually tried this myself for the first time. It was July of 2019. I was staying with a family just south of Berlin, Ohio. Their name was Miller, which around there is like being named Smith anywhere else. Enos Miller was the father, about 62 years old, gray beard down to the second button of his shirt. He had built one of these traps for his summer kitchen porch. It was the ugliest contraption I have ever seen. A weathered box fan sitting on a wooden crate. A piece of dark screen stretched across the back with 2-inch strips of duct tape. A little bowl of something underneath it that I could not identify at first. I was skeptical. I had spent probably $300 over the years on those big electric zappers, the ones that make that satisfying pop sound. I had tried the propane machines. I had tried the citronella candles, the tiki torches, the ultrasonic plug-ins. I had tried spraying the yard with a hose end applicator every 2 weeks all summer. Nothing worked for more than a day or two. And here was Enos telling me his ugly wooden box was going to solve the problem. He turned it on at 8 o'clock in the evening. We sat on the porch and talked until about 10. I got bit maybe twice. His grandkids were running barefoot in the yard, no bites at all. In the morning, before breakfast, he took me over to the trap. He unclipped the screen, and I swear to you I could not see the color of the mesh anymore. It was solid. A layer of dead mosquitoes thick enough that he had to knock the screen against a bucket to clear it. He estimated 3,000 mosquitoes, maybe more. The physics of why this works is actually beautiful in its simplicity. Mosquitoes are terrible flyers. Their top airspeed is about 1.5 miles per hour. A 20-inch box fan on medium setting moves air at roughly 7 to 9 miles per hour. So when a mosquito flies within range of the airflow, it cannot escape. It gets pulled toward the intake. The mesh on the back catches it. The continuous airflow presses it against the screen and dries out its body within a few hours. It dies of dehydration and exhaustion. No electricity zapping, no poison. Just moving air and a piece of screen. Here is exactly what you need to build one. A 20-inch box fan, any brand, the cheaper the better, honestly. You can pick one up new for around $18 or grab a used one at a yard sale for $5. A piece of fine mesh window screen large enough to cover the entire back of the fan with 2 inches of overhang on each side. You want the mesh openings around 1.1 millimeters, which is standard fiberglass window screen size. Bungee cords or heavy-duty clips to hold the screen in place. And that is genuinely all you need for the basic version. You mount the fan somewhere near where the mosquitoes are coming from, a low spot, a wet corner of the yard, near a rain barrel, along the edge of a wood line. The intake side, which is the back of the fan, faces the mosquito source. The screen goes on the back. You turn it on at dusk. You leave it running until morning. That is it. That is the whole thing. Now, the reason most people who try this online fail is because they place it wrong. They put it on their deck, facing outward, blowing away from the house. That is backwards. You want to place it between where you sit and where the mosquitoes breed. The airflow needs to intercept them as they travel toward you. Think of it like a river net. You do not put the net downstream of the fish. You put it right in the path. Now, if you already own a house and you are thinking this only applies to farms or big rural properties, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. This works just as well on a suburban lot, a townhouse patio, or even a small apartment balcony. In fact, some of the most impressive results I have personally seen were on a quarter-acre lot in a subdivision outside Lancaster, Pennsylvania. A retired school teacher named Harold set one up on the corner of his back porch. Within 2 weeks, his neighbors were coming over to ask what he was doing differently. If your house was built before 1980, you probably have one thing going for you that new construction lacks: a real porch. Not a deck, not a slab of concrete off the sliding door, but an actual covered porch with posts and a roof. That porch is the perfect spot for this trap. You mount the fan on the porch itself, facing outward toward the yard. The trap catches the mosquitoes as they come up from the lawn toward the house. Your porch stays clear, your yard population drops fast. For those of you without a porch, do not despair. You can mount the fan on any elevated surface, a picnic table, a workbench, even a milk crate turned upside down. The height you want is between 2 and 4 feet off the ground. That is where mosquitoes cruise looking for warm-blooded targets. Below 2 feet and above 4 feet, you catch fewer. That measurement comes straight from research done at the University of Florida's Medical Entomology Lab in 2011, published in the Journal of the American Mosquito Control Association. Now let me tell you the second modification the Amish use, because this is where you separate the amateurs from the people who actually get thousands of mosquitoes in one night. Underneath the fan, on the intake side, they place a shallow, dark bowl or container. Sometimes it is a black plastic tub, sometimes it is a cast iron skillet. Inside that container, they put a few things that release carbon dioxide slowly. The classic mixture is 1 cup of warm water, a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and 1 gram of active dry yeast, about a 1/4 teaspoon. The yeast eats the sugar. It releases carbon dioxide as a waste product. Carbon dioxide is what mosquitoes track when they hunt. You are essentially advertising a giant fake breathing mammal to every mosquito within 30 yards. Enos Miller had one more trick that I have never seen in any online guide or magazine article. He added a small piece of dark cloth, usually black or dark navy, draped near the intake but not blocking the airflow. Mosquitoes are visually attracted to dark shapes because those shapes look like mammals. So you have the smell attracting them from a distance, the fabric attracting them visually as they get closer, and the airflow sucking them in when they arrive. It is a 3-layer trap using nothing but items you probably already have in your house. The average American homeowner spends around $140 per season on mosquito control products. That is according to a 2022 survey from the National Pest Management Association. Multiply that by 30 years of homeownership, and you are looking at over $4,000 spent on sprays, candles, zappers, foggers, and services. All of it delivering less protection than a $12 box fan and a piece of window screen from 1953. There is something else you need to understand. Something that took me years to piece together. This is not just about mosquitoes. This is about a pattern. The pattern is this. Whenever a simple, mechanical, one-time purchase solution exists that works better than a repeat purchase chemical solution, the chemical solution gets marketed heavily and the mechanical solution gets forgotten. It happens with food preservation, it happens with home heating, it happens with water filtration, and it absolutely happens with pest control. In 1968, a company you have probably never heard of, called Kilgurm Chemicals, produced an internal marketing document that has since become semi-public through legal disclosures. That document explicitly stated that consumer education about mechanical pest control was a threat to long-term revenue. Their strategy was to associate all non-chemical methods with images of poverty and backwardness. They called mechanical traps peasant solutions in their internal communications. Meanwhile, the same companies were selling industrial-scale mechanical traps to airports, food processing plants, and military bases. Because those customers demanded results, not marketing. Think about that for a second. The exact same category of trap that gets sold to a food processing plant for $22,000 is being kept away from you at the consumer level because they would rather sell you a $12 can of spray every 3 weeks for the next 30 summers. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is basic business economics. Recurring revenue beats one-time purchases every single time. And the Amish, without ever attending a business school, figured out that the way to beat that system is simply to build the thing yourself. But there is more to this story. Because in 1974, a graduate student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison named David Peterson tried to publish a comprehensive study comparing DIY mechanical mosquito traps to commercial chemical treatments. His research showed the fan trap caught between 3 and 11 times more mosquitoes per dollar spent than any spray product on the market. His thesis was approved by his committee. But when he tried to publish the findings in Pest Control magazine, the article was rejected. When he submitted it to the Journal of Economic Entomology, it sat in review for 18 months and was returned without publication. The findings only survived because he included them as an appendix in his doctoral dissertation, which sits today in the University Library Archive. I mention this because I want you to understand that what you are learning right now is not folklore. It is not old-timer superstition. It is documented, measured, peer-reviewed research that was intentionally kept out of mainstream circulation because it threatened a profitable industry. The Amish did not invent this trap out of clever intuition. They inherited it from European farming traditions, refined it with local materials, and preserved it while the outside world got distracted by chemical marketing. I need to pause here for a second because I keep getting the same question in the comments. People ask me, Eli, where do you keep track of all this? And the honest answer is, I got tired of losing it. So I started writing every one of these down, room by room, the way the families who taught them to me would have written them in a journal. That collection is called the Amish Home System, and the link is sitting in the description below if you want it. Now, back to what I promised you. Every time you slap a mosquito on your neck this summer, understand what is happening. That mosquito was tracking your breath. It followed your carbon dioxide from 30 feet away. It saw your dark clothing. It landed on your warm skin. And it did so because nothing between it and you was doing what a simple box fan trap does, intercepting it in mid-flight and killing it before it ever got close. Now let me share the piece I promised you at the beginning. The one modification that pushes this trap from very good to genuinely astonishing. This is the detail that Enos Miller shared with me on the last morning I was at his farm. It was actually his father's discovery back in the 1970s, and as far as I can tell, it has never appeared in any published guide, extension bulletin, or homesteading magazine. Here it is. You add 1 tablespoon of molasses to the sugar yeast mixture underneath the fan, not sugar alone, not even just brown sugar. You add pure blackstrap molasses, and you cover the container with a piece of dark burlap or an old cotton feed sack with just a small opening at the top the size of a quarter. The molasses does 2 things that plain sugar cannot. First, it contains iron and trace minerals that slow the yeast fermentation, meaning your carbon dioxide production lasts 8 to 10 hours instead of 3 to 4. Second, molasses releases a specific chemical signature, a combination of lactic acid analogs and volatile fatty acid compounds that mimics human sweat more accurately than any other kitchen ingredient. This was independently confirmed in a 2008 study by researchers at Rothamsted Research in the United Kingdom, published in the Journal of Chemical Ecology. They were studying African malaria mosquitoes at the time, but the same principles apply to every mosquito species in North America. The burlap covering is the final touch. It slows down the release of the carbon dioxide, forcing it to build up and then puff out in concentrated bursts. Mosquitoes cannot resist a concentrated puff. They interpret it as breathing. In the wild, a mammal exhales in pulses. A steady release of CO2 does not match the pattern of anything living. A pulsed release, mimicking breath, is irresistible to a hungry female mosquito. Enos told me that his father figured this out by accident. He was using an old sugar container that still had traces of molasses in it, covered with a piece of burlap because he ran out of proper lids. He noticed his trap was catching noticeably more mosquitoes than his neighbor's version. It took him a full summer to figure out which variable was responsible. When he tested each element separately, the molasses accounted for roughly triple the catch. The burlap added another significant boost. Together, they turned a good trap into a devastating one. You can buy a bottle of blackstrap molasses at any grocery store for about $4. That bottle will last you the entire summer. Burlap can be picked up at any feed store, hardware store, or garden center for a few dollars a yard. If you already have an old cotton feed sack, a dark pillowcase, or even a folded piece of dark cloth, you can use that instead. Total added cost for this modification under $5 for a whole season of use. Set your trap up before dusk, mix half a cup of warm water, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, and 1 tablespoon of blackstrap molasses in a shallow dark bowl. Sprinkle a 1/4 teaspoon of active dry yeast on top. Do not stir it, let the yeast activate slowly. Cover the bowl loosely with a piece of dark burlap, leaving a small opening near the top. Place the bowl directly under the intake side of your fan. Turn the fan on medium speed, walk away. In the morning, you will find the screen coated in dead mosquitoes. You empty them into the compost or the trash. You refresh the sugar molasses yeast mixture, you put the trap back into position, and you do this every evening for as long as mosquito season lasts. For most of the country, that is roughly May through September. In the deep south, it is nearly year-round. Regardless of your location, your total investment for the entire season, including the fan if you have to buy one, is under $30. Compare that to the $400 propane trap, or the $972 mosquito magnet executive model I saw advertised online last week, or the $200 per month a professional service will charge to spray your yard with chemicals that harm every beneficial insect they touch. There is something almost poetic about the fact that a farmer in Pennsylvania in 1953 solved a problem that a $22 billion industry has spent 7 decades pretending is unsolvable. He did it with a fan, a piece of screen, some kitchen molasses, and a scrap of burlap. And that solution has been sitting in plain sight, preserved by a community of people who never cared about being on the cutting edge, only about being on the true edge. I want you to picture yourself 2 weeks from tonight. It is a warm evening. The sun is setting. You are on your porch, or your patio, or your balcony, and you are not being eaten alive. You are not slapping at your neck every 30 seconds. You are not hosing yourself in chemicals that give you a headache. You are just sitting there, watching the fireflies come out, listening to the quiet, feeling the breeze from that ugly wooden trap, doing exactly what it was designed to do 60 years before you were born. That is what real self-sufficiency feels like. Not survival, not scarcity, just quiet competence, passed down from someone who figured it out and refused to let it be forgotten. If you are the kind of person who believes that real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect someone else's profit, you already know what to do next. This trap is one piece of a much larger puzzle. Every summer of your life, you have been sold problems you did not need, so you would keep buying solutions that do not work. That ends the moment you build your first fan trap. Here is what I want you to do right now before you close this video. Go into the comments and tell me one thing. What is the mosquito control product you have spent the most money on that turned out to be a complete waste? Was it the propane trap, the zapper, the professional service, the candles? Type it out in the comments below. I read every single one, and I want to hear the specific dollar amount you lost before you found this video. That number is going to shock other viewers, and it might just be the thing that convinces someone else's grandfather to stop wasting money and start building. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep recovering the things that were taken from you. Not just the mosquito trap, not just this one piece of buried knowledge. All of it. The heating techniques that eliminate winter fuel bills, the food preservation methods that make your freezer irrelevant, the water systems that make you independent of the utility, the building techniques that let you fix your own home without permits, without contractors, without paying someone in a corporate office to tell you what you are allowed to do on your own land. This channel is a movement of people rebuilding what was quietly stolen, one buried technique at a time. Next week, I am releasing a video about something even bigger than the mosquito trap. It is a heating method the Amish use to keep their kitchens warm all winter using less than $40 of fuel per month, even in the coldest parts of Ohio. There is a specific detail in it that involves a 1931 patent filed by an inventor in Reading, Pennsylvania, a patent that expired unused because the man who filed it could not afford the renewal fees. The Amish picked it up. They have been using it quietly ever since, and when you see how simple it is, you will not believe you have been paying utility bills your whole life without knowing this existed. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, leave that comment about the money you have wasted on mosquito control. And this weekend, before you do anything else, walk out to your garage or your shed, find that old box fan you have been meaning to throw away, cut a piece of screen, mix the sugar, molasses, and yeast. Cover it with burlap, set it up at dusk, and in the morning when you walk out to that trap and see what it caught, you will understand exactly what I meant at the start of this video when I said the Amish figured out something the rest of us are still paying to be lied to about. The knowledge existed, someone tried to bury it, a community preserved it, now you have it. Use it well, pass it on, and I will see you next week with the next piece of what they hoped you would never learn. Before you close this video and get on with your evening, I want to share a few more details that did not fit into the main story but that you deserve to know, because they change how you will think about every mosquito bite you have ever received and every dollar you have ever spent trying to prevent one. The first thing you should understand is that the sugar and molasses mixture is not the only bait the Amish use. In the older communities around Holmes County, Ohio, and Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, there are families who add a specific ingredient that most people would never guess. They pour in a small amount of overripe fruit, usually banana peels that have gone brown and soft, or the skins of peaches after canning season in late August. The reason is simple. The fermentation of that fruit produces a compound called ethyl acetate, which is one of the most powerful mosquito attractants ever identified in a laboratory setting. A study published in the Journal of Medical Entomology in 1998 confirmed that ethyl acetate combined with carbon dioxide increases mosquito trap catches by as much as 340% compared to carbon dioxide alone. The Amish did not read that study. They did not need to. They had been throwing peach skins into their fermentation buckets for over 100 years before the researchers ever measured the effect. The second detail is about the burlap covering. I mentioned earlier that the burlap allows the carbon dioxide to seep out slowly. What I did not mention is that the weave of the burlap matters. A tight, fine weave will hold the gas in too long and reduce the plume that draws mosquitoes from a distance. A loose, coarse weave will let the gas escape all at once and dissipate before it can travel across your yard. The Amish learned through generations of trial and error that the ideal burlap is the kind used for coffee sacks and grain bags, usually somewhere between 8 and 10 ounces per square yard. If you go to a feed store and ask for a used grain sack, you will get exactly the right material for less than $2. If you order burlap from a craft store, you will probably get something too fine and your trap will underperform. This is the kind of detail that never appears in the online tutorials, because the people writing those tutorials have never actually built the trap. They are copying each other, and the copy has degraded with each generation, the way a photocopy of a photocopy loses its sharpness. The third detail is about placement. I told you to set the trap at dusk, and that is correct, but where you set it matters just as much as when. The Amish always place the trap at the boundary between two different environments. That means at the edge of the lawn where it meets the tree line, or at the corner where the garden meets the barn, or along the fence that separates the pasture from the pond. The reason is that mosquitoes travel along what entomologists call edge habitats. They do not fly across open lawns in random directions. They follow the lines where two ecosystems meet, because that is where they find the warm-blooded animals they need to feed on. If you place your trap in the middle of your backyard, you will catch a modest number of mosquitoes. If you place it at the edge, 6 feet from the tree line, facing outward toward the woods, you will catch anywhere from 4 to 7 times as many. A man named Ezra Miller, who lives outside of Millersburg, Ohio, told a visiting journalist in 2011 that his family had been placing their traps at what he called the seam of the world, the place where the tame land meets the wild land. That phrase stuck with me, and I think it captures something important about how the Amish understand the natural world in a way that modern suburban homeowners have completely forgotten. The fourth detail is about maintenance. The sugar and yeast mixture will produce carbon dioxide actively for about 10 to 14 days, depending on the temperature. In hot weather, the fermentation runs faster and burns out sooner. In cool weather, it lasts longer but produces less gas per hour. The Amish refresh the mixture every 10 days during peak mosquito season, which in most of the eastern United States runs from late May through early September. That means over the course of a summer, a single trap will consume roughly 12 cups of sugar, 3 cups of molasses, and about 4 packets of yeast. The total cost per trap per season is somewhere between $8 and $12. Compare that to the average American household, which according to a 2019 survey by the National Pest Management Association spends about $240 per year on mosquito control products, and you begin to see the scale of what has been taken from ordinary families over the decades. Multiply that difference by the roughly 120 million households in the United States, and you are looking at something in the neighborhood of $27 billion a year flowing out of American pockets and into the accounts of chemical companies for a problem that could have been solved with a box fan and a bucket of sugar water The fifth detail, and this is the one that I think will stay with you the longest, is about what happens to the mosquitoes after they are caught. In a chemical spray, the mosquitoes die and fall to the ground, where their bodies decompose and release the pesticides back into your soil. Over years, that pesticide load builds up. It kills the earthworms. It kills the beneficial insects that pollinate your garden. It kills the ground beetles that eat slugs and grubs. The trap does none of that. The mosquitoes are caught alive on the screen, held there by the airflow, and eventually die of dehydration. Their bodies are dry, chemical-free, and can be swept into the compost pile, where they add a small amount of nitrogen to the soil. The Amish, being farmers, noticed this too. They observed that the gardens near the traps produced better yields than the gardens near the sprayed fields. They did not need a laboratory to tell them why. They could see it in the tomatoes and the beans and the sweet corn. I want to close with one more story because I think it captures the spirit of what we have been talking about. In the summer of 1976, during the American bicentennial celebrations, a public health official from the state of Pennsylvania visited an Amish community near Intercourse to investigate reports that the community had unusually low rates of mosquito-borne illness. He expected to find some kind of environmental factor, maybe fewer standing water sources, maybe a different bird population that ate more mosquitoes. What he found instead was traps, dozens of them, on every property, quietly working. He wrote a report. The report was filed. The report was never acted on. It sits to this day in a state archive in Harrisburg, where I confirmed its existence through a public records request last year. The title of the report is simply Observations on Vector Control Practices Among Plain Communities, Lancaster County, Summer of 1976. 14 pages. Never published, never cited. Never mentioned again.